Welcome to another episode of Unzip, Reboot and Leave URL podcast. If you want to reboot your mind, live life in your own terms, this is the right place for you. Today we have our guest, Dilip Mukerjee, who is a very well read in economics, author and engineer, and very good friend of mine and my mentor as well. So we will start from here. How are you, Dilip da?
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so today we will only talk about inequality in the world because it is a burning issue at this point of time, and it is creating a lot of havoc, or it is creating a lot of easiness, or that's the way it is. We will explore it with you today. Okay, first, what is inequality?
To answer that question, I've got to set the scene or articulate the context. First of all, I think it is better to start with what is not rather than what it is. For example, say if you earn $100,000 a year and I earn $30,000 a year. That is not the context, that is not the issue which inequality is about. If you live in a village in a thatched roof and I live in a city in a beautiful house, that is not what inequality is about. What is inequality in the sense what the world is thinking about today? There is a clear movement to reduce inequality is a little bit different. Therefore, now if you come to say what it is by definition the extremes of wealth, not income. There is a difference between wealth and income. If I go to work and earn $100,000 a year, that is my income. If you have a property, real estate, which you either inherited or you own, which is $115 million, that is wealth. If you have, say, an equities portfolio of $100 million, from which obviously you will get an income, that is wealth. So income, by definition, you can get from your wealth and from your work. That means you are exchanging your labor and earning funds from which you lead a regular daily life. I'm very pleased to let you know that this inequality, what we are trying to define, has been going since the Roman Empire. So it is very old. It is unfortunate that until today, very recently, there was no movement, there was no discussion, there was no thinking how to reduce inequality. It is fair to say that economists in their studies, their research, they did come across the term, they did come across the idea, they did come across the reason, they did come across all this. However, there was no movement. Why? Because they thought that is normal. To set that scene, I must also say, and this is important to mention, that inequality between different people's brains, their capacity, their cognitive ability, their intellectual ability, that inequality is not the issue over here. That will always be there. You and me, we are not equal. Number one. And the next thing it is important to mention, there is a term in economics called self-interest. A lot of people think the self-interest means selfishness. It is not. Self-interest means I want to pursue what I am interested in. It may be economics for me, it may be finance for you, it may be journalism for you and driving for me. So these are self-interest. I mean, I'm interested in that. You are a businessman, you are interested in making money. I love to read. My interest is in reading more and more and hoarding maybe knowledge, maybe ideas. So therefore, it is very important to understand that self-interest is not selfishness. And all these years, political economy, at least in the developed part of the world, was driven by self-interest. So in order to talk about inequality, it is very pertinent, important, and relevant to look at the economic history. I talked about Rome, so let us keep Rome aside and say how in our time inequality slowly crept up, and now it has come to a stage when economists like Michael Hudson, Abhijit Banerjee, Varoufakis of Greece, and Amartya Sen. So these kind of thinkers are now contributing to a movement where we can change our paradigm and think of a solution how we can have more humanity instilled in our everyday life rather than worrying about how much income I can get from my wealth. So, I said about economic history, it has been found by Thomas Piketty, whose famous book Capital in the 21st Century. He has done a lot of time series analysis, and in my opinion he was pretty apt in saying that the wealth accumulation actually started because of colonialism. I go to your place, I rob, I pillage, and I bring certain amount of goods and certain amount of knowledge, and I come back to my country and I build mansions. The Spaniards have done that, the Portuguese have done that, and more lately the Dutch did that. So his time series clearly showed that over a period of time, say maybe 300 years, this wealth passed on from father to son, that means inherited, had created or accumulated a great amount of wealth so that the current generation, they can enjoy life the way they want it from the income from the wealth. It must be pointed out that there is a correlation between the return you will get from your wealth and the amount of wealth. That means, in very simple English, if my father or grandfather was rich, in terms of returns from their wealth, I will be also rich in terms of returns of wealth. That means my income returns have a relationship or correlation of the past. Again, in normal English we say the rich always gets richer. It doesn't follow that this is a movement which got relationship with Karl Marx or Ricardo. It is not. It definitely accepts the fact that there will be clever people, they will take risk, they will become rich, they will invent goods and services which we need. That will always be there. So this is the context we are talking about inequality. We are talking about inequality of great wealth, say about 1% of the people of developed countries, and in between there will be maybe 30% in the developed country context having $7 million net wealth. These $7 million net wealth, you can call them middle class if you want to call them, and the rest are actually working poor. In short, most of the people in the developed country are working poor. Let us not talk about the developing countries, because this comparison will not be fair. We will then see, if we want to compare, that all these developing countries in Asia and Africa, they are not haves, they are not have-nots, but they are in a different category called never haves. That means they will never ever have anything.
Yeah.
So we will come to that later on, but this is the context when people think about inequality. Thank you.
Right. Okay, very good start. So from colonialism, you said this actually started, right? And this
wealth accumulation.
Wealth accumulation. Okay. Now, indefinitely, whatever way the next generation is behaving, they are getting income out of it, which is fine. But some generations or some families also get destroyed because of the bad behavior, right? But still, during that time, it is also another family or another intellectual is coming up and creating that huge amount of wealth. Okay, so this level of lack of intelligence or lack of resource will happen all the time. But after colonialism, government didn't put, or any other thought leaders didn't put much effort into it, or it is becoming so radical now we have to really thought about it.
That is correct. That is correct.
So it is really radical and really shifting the social fabric.
We need to do something about it.
We need to do something about it. Okay. So one way of doing things is government level, right?
Now you are coming to solutions. You can come to solutions towards the end.
Okay.
But
okay, then come to this thing. In between, some questions I have, which is, because of this, one thing I am perceiving or I am reading somewhere, is it true that middle class is getting poorer and poorer? Because by default, resources we have are much more than what previous generation had. That may be electricity, that may be water, that may be information or whatever. But the way less hassled middle class, lower middle class used to lead their life, it's getting messed up, or will get messed up more and more?
Yes, that is one reason why there is this movement for bringing more equality between the haves and the have-nots. That is one reason why.
Right. Okay. Now, because of this inequality, okay, inequality is there, it is in a very bad situation at the moment, but on the line, this is also happening that a lot of people are actually coming out from abject poverty to poverty, or very low lower middle class to middle class, and so few shifts are also happening. Is it because of this wealth injected by a little bit of humanity, those things are happening, or that's just another cycle of economics by itself?
No. The first answer to your question is no. The wealth is not trickling down.
Okay.
And the second question is yes. The answer to your second question is yes. There's a lot of foundations, like for this famous foundation is Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. There are a lot of foundations like that. They are trying to equalize, they are trying to uplift the poor, they are trying their best to reduce the health and education issues. Yes, there are, but the problem is they have finite resources, and the amount of work they have to do is so large relative to their finite resources that it is a very small fish in a large pond.
Right, right. This liberalism or neoliberalism,
Yes.
whatever, or the market economy,
Yes.
did that inject a fuel into this?
The answer is yes, it has, towards the later stages, say from about 100 years ago. As I said, it is very important to read or understand or discuss a little bit about economic history.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly 100 years ago, when modern economics started, economics was not a subject before. When economics started as economics, it was like political economy. It is even now, but people do not focus on political economy. People focus more on economics as a subject, and that has become more and more mathematical. So people think it is a science, so people think it's a God-given law, like physics, like chemistry, like mathematics. Unfortunately, it is not. It is simply a behavioral science. The reason why it is wrong, and most of the time it is wrong, because we as individuals, as human beings, you cannot forecast my behavior. That is the reason why it is wrong, and most of the time it is wrong. Now when you look back, it started as one economic policy which has been implemented in politics, and that is called Keynesian economics and Keynesian economic policy, where the government and the marketplace, that means the buyers and sellers, they call it the invisible hands, they will determine the price and it will run smoothly. When it doesn't run smoothly, if I am the government, I will intervene. And I'll make it run smoothly. Why? Because I am the government, I have resources, I'll invest in resources, I'll allocate resources and try to smoothen it out. Roughly in the 70s, this neoclassical economics, monetary policy, all this replaced the Keynesian economics and Keynesian economics political economy. The originators were three Austrian economists led by Hayek, and later on Chicago School of Economics, led by Milton Friedman. And they came out with neoclassical economics where they said, no, you forget that government expenditure. Let us go back to the basics, which means the self-interest of individuals, and you got to give them freedom, and freedom to earn, freedom to invest, freedom to think, freedom to create goods and services, so that the market can decide what is the demand for their goods and services. Accordingly, they can supply the goods and services, and that will determine the price. So the government should keep their hands off. That is the essence of neoclassical economics, from where neoliberalism has come. We call it neoliberalism, where the recommendation for the government is to keep your hands off. Now, this has been going on for a long time, as I said, nearly 100 years. And you can see what is the result. The result is the wealth, like Thomas Piketty said, when R is greater than G, that means my return from my wealth is greater than the country's growth national product. When it is more, then I'm just sitting down here and getting rich, because the return from my wealth is more than the country's gross national product. I don't have to do anything. There is another issue here, and this is very important to flag, that these people who are wealthy in the sense either they inherited wealth or they created wealth which the first top 1% only we can think of, the top 1%. These people, if you really think about it, they have no incentive to be creative or innovative. If I can sit here and get what I want, I have no incentive to waste my brain and come out with something new. I have no incentive to, they call it propensity to consume. My propensity to consumption is based on the theory, is called, on the demand side, it is called marginal utility. Utility means happiness. So because I got everything, I don't need anything more. The first apple which I ate was beautiful. The second apple, little less beautiful. The third apple, I don't want to eat anymore. So that is called marginal utility. That means at the margin, my happiness or my utility is reducing. That is on the demand side. On the supply side, it is called law of diminishing returns. So therefore, what happened to the wealthy is they do want goods and services, of course, but they really want top quality goods and services. Why? Because their needs are met with the other run of the mill. Their utility is met. Their happiness is met. So the happiness is gone 1 degree above, so they want all top class goods and services. So as a result, over a period of say 25 to 30 years, the production of luxury goods and services have increased. And these luxury goods and services, those who are producing it, they have become wealthy. Because why? Because they can price it to this market. Who's got the money? For them, $250,000 car is not an issue. They'll just order it over the phone. So what is happening is, as I said before, wealth is not trickling down. These people who are building the cars, these people who are making factories, these people who are producing goods like accountants, lawyers, their salaries, their income, the rate of growth was so poor that the amount they could save to build wealth or nothing to write home about. It was not great. So remember, if you don't have a high income, you can't create wealth, because a part of your income will be spent, a part of your income will be saved for tomorrow, and a part of your income can become wealth. Like, you buy a mansion where you don't have to work, you can just sit idle and make money from your wealth. In very early times, that was land. The landowners, they were doing this, and that's why they are called rentiers. And people who want to do this, like the Bezos and like all these modern software companies, we call them rent seekers. They want a monopoly. They want to change regulation, government regulation. They want to maintain their monopoly. They want to do mergers and acquisitions. They manipulate the stock market. They will do all that to maintain their wealth. So we actually call them rent seekers. So these monopolists, rent seekers, and rentiers, these three are the enemies of inequality.
Okay. Because of this, is anywhere, okay, so one thing is like definitely rich are getting richer. There is a business or rent seeker, as you mentioned. Is war one of the manifestation of this, or not related as such?
I think that's quite brilliant, because war is definitely a part of it. Because all these contractors who are producing the goods and services for war, they are rent seekers. That is why you can see Skype has come, now Zoom has come. All this has come for rent seeking. You haven't got it, you have to use Zoom.
Yes.
So I'm rent seeking on my product. So war industry is 100%, it has to do with rent seeking, it has to do with monopoly of businesses, and it has to do with the disparity of wealth. It has to do with the disparity between haves and have-nots. Definitely. So this is a very good question.
Okay. Now the next thing is, what are the political implications of it? Okay. The reason I asked you is pretty much we understand, okay, one is the leftist and one is the rightist. Some are in between. Some says leftists are not that right in this market economy, rightists are the capitalists are the best place, etc., etc. How this inequality actually manifests into political landscape? Is it like more right way shifting, or doesn't really matter maybe?
It matters a great deal from what I have mentioned right from the Roman times. In Roman times, there used to be a lot of civil wars. In past 300-400 years, the colonial times, there were a lot of civil wars. Today, there is a lot of civil unrest. Why there is no direct civil war? Because by definition, I can't have a civil war when you have all the guns and I got no gun. That is not a civil war, it is a war. You are killing me because you got the guns, I haven't got any. So what is happening today is civil unrest. And if we don't do something to reduce inequality so that it trickles down to the have-nots and then to the never-haves, it has to trickle down. If it doesn't, then the civil unrest will continue to a point when the society will become chaotic and it will lead to civil wars, just like you saw in Ireland, like you saw in South America, like you saw in Pakistan, like you saw in Bangladesh recent history. So what will happen with the civil unrest? You saw that in Yugoslavia it became different independent countries. To give you a straight example, if there are 15 states, or I don't know now, maybe 20, 25 states, these states, because of civil unrest, will maybe independent countries or strive towards independence. So from civil war, it will be from civic unrest, it will become civil war. From civil war, it will come to independence, if it happens at all. So that means a lot of bloodbath. So that is the ultimate of inequality, bloodbath, like it happened even during the Roman Empire.
Wow. Okay. And another thing is, let's say in the developed world and developing world, two different understanding fully. Because of this inequality, one thing is clear, that it has effects all over the world in different capacity. Does it create corruption in the developing world because of this? Because at the end of the day, because of the social media, everyone is seeing the aspirations, the consumption around the world. They also want more. So, will that increase the level of corruption where there is not much law or regulations or compliance is less?
There are two things. It is very sad to say that this corruption is more in the developed world, and it is far less in the developing world, because they are simply trying to catch up with the developed world. I'll give you an example. The example is the holders of wealth, they spend heavily on lobbyists. Lobbyists are well paid, and lobbyists are salespeople who will go around influencing the politicians so that they have laws in their favor, they have influence to change regulations so that my business is less affected, and hence I can work towards a monopoly or become a monopolist or do rent seeking. So they manipulate the law, and they manipulate the law through the politicians via lobbyists. Therefore, it is very sad that there is corruption in the developed country as well. We don't talk about it because it is impolite to talk about. It is very, very acceptable if I say the third world country people are corrupt. They have nepotism, they have favoritism, and that's why they are poor.
No.
The same thing applies to developed countries. But the difference is, in the developed country, this corruption is creating more monopolists. They are creating more rent seekers. In the developing countries, they are trying to catch up what we are trying to do in the developed country. So how can you say that they are corrupt and we are not?
No.
That is not true.
Right. Okay. So that means we are definitely in a situation we have to do something about it as a humanity or as a whole 8 billion people. What kind of solutions you are seeing can happen or can be done, or economists are already trying to focus on?
Yes, it definitely tends towards a change in political economy. Just to put things in perspective, the Bank of England got 400,000 gold bars in their vault. And most of these gold bars belong to foreign countries. They kept away with the Bank of England to borrow money. So, what the thinkers of today in this movement are saying, I gave this example because what's the point in having gold if I'm not using that to reduce inequality? So this is just an example. So what they're saying that there are countries, most of them are British, we have to make sure that they don't have the incentive for the wealthier people to keep money in their countries, like Bermuda, for example, Jersey, for example. Most of these are British territories, small countries, where there is no tax. So, one solution is where we are going to get the money from to give grants, for example, scholarships to students, for example, apprenticeship to students who want to go to TAFE stream, for example, increase the dole payment, those who are not getting a job. So, for example, the decent pay, because the wages growth was so poor last 50 years. I want to pay them more, but how do we do that? We need like a fiscal balance between income and expenditure. So the first thing Abhijit Banerjee also said only few months ago, we have to plan to tax these countries where the wealth is going and multiplying at an accelerated rate. We have to make money as governments, we have to tax them. That's number one priority. And Abhijit Banerjee said he has been trying for 15 years for governments to tax these countries. No one is taking any notice. So this proves that what kind of political power these wealthy people have. They have fantastic political power. As I said just now, the lobbyists are salesmen. They go around whispering to these politicians, don't change anything. You change something, then my boss will become little poorer. So that proves the point. Then the second thing is, in a context of this country, in Australia, like in Norway, like in Singapore, all these wealthy countries, they have something called a future fund, for spending in rainy days or to pay your pension. They invest this money. So one of the arguments is that, okay, you got this money in Norway, it is very high, for example. In Kuwait, the Arab countries is very high, Australia is in the middle. So what Finland said, good, we got this money, we are getting an income, we'll pay a dividend to every citizen in this country. So at least it's like the dole, it is like, helping the common man.
A holistic upliftment, a little bit, yeah.
And then they are saying, education, either make it free for everybody, like we had here even in this country in the 60s, or give generous scholarships. At least then you are doing something for upliftment of the have-nots. So social mobility is through education. So therefore the never-haves can think about going to school, and the have-nots can get an opportunity to go to Harvard and Cambridge and Oxford. So there will be a chance of social mobility to raise your standard of living, to raise your income, and ultimately to raise your wealth and to reduce the wealth gap between the have and the have-nots. So the pension level for the older people, the health system for old and young, we got to spend a lot of money. We got to spend a lot of money for training, for the safety net, and for apprenticeship. And the money, how do I get it? By tax, tax and tax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, resources tax, tax these countries who got zero tax, and so all the wealthy people are going and putting their money there. Tax inheritance, my father kept $100 million for me, tax it. And taxing businesses is useless, taxing individuals is useless. Why? Because businesses are paying tax based on the profit. And profit can be manipulated through depreciation, profit can be manipulated through inventory system, profit can be manipulated by inflating invoices, profit can be manipulated by changing wages, profit can be managed by cost of goods sold, profit can be manipulated. Therefore, increasing tax on businesses which is based on profit is useless. You will not make a lot of income to distribute. Taxing people like you and me who just go to earn money and make an income to run the family is useless. Even if you don't collect any tax for them, even then you can run the business, your country.
True.
So the tax must not come where the rate of growth of my wages or the normal people or normal businesses will be losing incentive. No. You should not desensitize these people on earning an income. Let them keep the incentive. But unfair taxes, that means you must tax the rentiers, that means those who are sitting here getting rent from their land, from their properties, from their estate, and not lifting anything and consuming all expensive things. Tax them heavily. Tax inheritance heavily. So that people now, they are keeping away for the rainy days and for their children instead of spending the money now. If you spend the money now, there will be economic growth and more people will get jobs.
In US there is like this inheritance tax is
Yes, UK
high.
also.
Okay.
There is.
But still there is a manipulation going on, so that.
Oh, they for example, these trusts.
Oh yeah.
So trusts are nothing but a tax dodge. I keep all my properties and everything in the trust, and the trust is not taxed.
Yeah.
And the beneficiaries of the trust, I can put anybody, my cat, my dog, my grandchildren who are not yet born, I can do anything. So therefore, that is just a tax dodge, these trusts.
Right, right.
Some of the foundations which you think are for good reason, they can also dodge taxes and they can also be used for dodging taxes.
Yes.
So therefore that
facade is doing
yes,
good for the society.
therefore there has to be some limitation on that. There has to be limitation on political donations.
Yeah.
That is a very important thing. There has to be limitation on lobbyists.
Yes.
For example, I'm the government, you go to tell me you are a wealthy Ford or General Motor or Amazon, you got to tell me how much money you are spending and who are your lobbyists. Because I know as a government, all these lobbyists are going and telling members of Congress to manipulate regulation. We know it is happening every day.
Right.
Because I'm government, I know it is happening.
Yep.
So we want in writing who is your lobbyist and how much money you are spending on lobbying, so I can control that. It is very hard. Very hard. Why? Because these people got so much wealth, and there is always the temptation that if I can't corrupt you with $10, if I give you $100, you will definitely be corrupt. So that's a human nature. If I can't corrupt you with $100, I will corrupt you with $1,000. So if I want to corrupt you and I'm so wealthy, for me, a few $1 million paying to the lobbyist, few $1 million to pay to the politician, it's nothing. Because I'm a monopolist, I'm a rentier, I want the regulations to be relaxed so that I can do mergers and acquisitions and become a monopolist. I can once I'm a monopolist, I can raise the prices of my goods and services and make more money. So,
Right.
so therefore, I have a lot of incentive to bribe you.
Right.
It is very difficult. So, like Abhijit Banerjee said, it is better to start taxing these countries who got zero tax
Right.
or no or very little tax.
Yeah. One thing also you mentioned, which is like a holistic increase of the like a salary,
Yeah.
little bit of extra money to the pensioners, or education will be free, and all these things. Okay, so there are a lot of like debate around it, which is few people, like some people will take advantage of it and they will do nothing, they will just sit, and definitely many people will try to thrive or make their life on it. Is there any like a ratio of like a more good people in the society, or how, or when everyone comfort will go up, automatically the mentality will also shift?
Yes, the technical term is called utility. Utility means, say, happiness. That's the best way one can put it. So, to answer your questions, the happiness of the common man, the man in the street, to increase their happiness so that they live more peacefully, in harmony with their family, that is the ultimate goal of society. So, therefore, the answer to your question is yes. We want that to happen. And why it is not happening? Because of corruption. Why it is not happening? Because of inheritance. Why it is not happening? Because in the past, land and landed good, anything to do with land, this is time from when, the Normans, 1000 years ago. Anyone who owns land, he's the baron, and he allows other people to till the soil and get a rent, and that's why they are called rentiers. In today's world, that has to stop. That has to stop. So property has to be taxed, land has to be taxed. Companies, the company tax, as I said just now, it is based on profits. Forget that. But resources rent. Resources rent. That means I got so much of iron ore. Tax it more. Tax BHP more, because they are taking out more iron ore, and I distribute that to my school, to hospital, to roads. I can build up wages, because wages will depend on productivity. So I can build capital equipment. I can buy capital equipment. I'll spend a lot of money on research. I'll spend a lot of money on innovation. So therefore, all these educated people will become entrepreneurs and come out with new goods. And as a government, I'll buy them. I'll train apprentices.
So more well-oiled.
Yeah, it's more well-oiled economy, and our happiness or utility will slowly increase. It will not go down. At the moment, it is stagnant or going down. In terms of percentages, the top 1%, or the worldwide, you can say the top 10% worldwide, actually makes the same money as the bottom 70% makes. This is in terms of percentage, statistically. You can imagine how bad it is. That means the top 10% virtually doing nothing, and the bottom 70% are what we call working poor. In the developed country, it is called working poor. You give me a job, but other than paying electricity bills and gas bills and taxes, I'm not getting much. I'm not getting much. I can go to Queensland maybe, at the most, go to Queensland. That's all.
Right. So on that, like in this pressure cooker situation, definitely like a lot of entities have to do something about it, and hopefully things are happening that way. From an individual level, in this pressure cooker situation, for happiness, let's say, what are the things, let's say a middle class, okay, which middle class in the sense who has bit of an education, who has bit of a money to, like send their kids to school, or little bit of, vacation and all these things, for their own personal happiness in this pressure cooker situation, 2-3 things or 5 things they must do, or they must keep an eye on for the future?
It is very sad. They cannot do anything if the rate of growth, remember rate, not absolute, a rate of growth of their income does not increase. And the rate of growth of the income will increase only when there is higher productivity. That means I'm producing more goods and services, which means there is more capital investment. Capital means not only human capital, it also means machineries, land, better land, things like that. So therefore, to answer that question, a common man, whether you are in developing country, whether you are in Africa, whether you are in a developed country, a common man can only do when there is a political will to change the political economy. If there is no change in political economy, that's what the movement is about. And that's why only maybe a dozen economists are pushing the barrel to change. So therefore, more and more thinkers, more and more middle class, more and more educated people, if they are not aware and not thinking, very little will change. Very little will change. Because all these people who taught us in university, in economics classes, they are all neoliberal educated people. So because it is in their head that this is the only economic policy, so to change political economy, this movement has to go on till something changes at the university level. So that these middle class kids can have an education which will give them an option. Now they think this is the end, there is no other option. Unless you want to become a communist, and it has proved that communism doesn't work. So what they do, they accept it.
Yeah.
It is not acceptable.
Right. So on that, as I mentioned before, if you want to live your life in your own terms in this pressure cooker situation, still you can. There is a hope. Definitely, as a humanity, we have to hope for. This is the right place for you. So on that, we will end this podcast here. Thank you, Dilip Da, for having this nice conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.